Story Kids Rise.
Little Red Riding Hood. Fairy tales for kids at Story Kids Rise. Once upon a time in a quaint village, there lived a young girl named Little Red Riding Hood. She was known for her bright red hood that her grandmother had lovingly made for her. Little Red Riding Hood was always eager to visit her grandmother, who lived on the other side of the dense and mysterious forest. One sunny morning, her mother called out to her, "Little Red Riding Hood, your grandmother isn't feeling well. Would you be a dear and take this basket of fresh fruits and homemade cookies to her?" Little Red Riding Hood happily agreed, taking the basket and setting off on her journey. As she entered the forest, she felt the warm sunlight filtering through the trees and heard the birds singing merrily. Little did she know that a cunning wolf had been watching her from behind the trees. The wolf, with a sly grin, decided to play a trick on the innocent girl. The wolf approached Little Red Riding Hood and asked, "Where are you going, my dear?" She replied, "I'm going to visit my grandmother, who's not feeling well, and I've brought her some treats." The wolf, pretending to be concerned, said, "Oh, what a thoughtful girl you are. But the path through the forest is long and winding. Why don't you pick some wildflowers for your grandmother as well? It will surely brighten her day." Little Red Riding Hood, trusting the wolf's words, ventured off the path to gather some wildflowers. Unbeknownst to her, the wolf took a shortcut to her grandmother's house, arriving there before she did. The wolf knocked on the door and, when the old woman asked who it was, he replied in a sweet voice, "It's your granddaughter, Little Red Riding Hood, dear." The grandmother, unable to see well, let the wolf inside. But Little Red Riding Hood, taking her time with the flowers, eventually arrived at her grandmother's house. When she entered, she was surprised to see the wolf in her grandmother's bed, dressed in her grandmother's nightgown. "Oh, my dear, you're here," the wolf said with a wicked grin. Little Red Riding Hood, realizing the deception, cleverly responded, "Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have." The wolf, now alarmed, replied, "All the better to see you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood continued, "And what big ears you have." The wolf nervously said, "All the better to hear you with, my dear." With a mischievous twinkle in her eye, Little Red Riding Hood finally said, "And what big teeth you have." The wolf, now panicking, exclaimed, "All the better to eat you with." But Little Red Riding Hood was no ordinary girl. She quickly grabbed a nearby frying pan and, with a swift and clever move, knocked the wolf out cold. Her grandmother, safe and sound, cheered for her brave granddaughter, and together they tied up the wolf until the village woodcutters arrived to take him away. From that day on, Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother shared stories and laughter, grateful for their adventure in the deep, dark forest, and the lessons they had learned about trusting strangers. Little Red Riding Hood. Fairy tales for kids at Story Kids Rise. Kids, please like, share, and subscribe to this video.
Story Kids Rise.